Hello, and welcome to Fighting Over the VCR. My name is Matthew.
My name's Nancy.
That is Mulder in the background.
Very talkative tonight.
Very. He's got some opinions, I guess, that need to be expressed. And, well, welcome, and thank you for listening. And we have a new episode this week that is going to be fun. We had a couple movies that we're building up a list. The list is getting long. Mm-hmm. And we're really excited about future episodes that we're going to be putting together for you guys. Well, let's get to it. So, the movies this week are on the lighter side.
Couple of comedies,
early, mid-'80s. In the second half of this episode, I'm going to be talking about a fun movie called Clue.
Movie based on a board game.
And Nancy's going to kick us off talking about a movie that, it's a lot of fun to rewatch, especially now that I'm older.
And a dad.
Mr. Mom.
All right, so the movie I'm going to talk about tonight is Mr. Mom. Came out in '83. Is written by John Hughes and stars Michael Keaton as Jack Butler, my favorite Michael Keaton movie of all time.
Wow.
Yeah. It says a lot because he's very funny, but this is just kind of quintessential Michael Keaton as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, because, he's kind of taken a much more dramatic turn probably in the later years. I don't know when I don't know if would you consider Birdman a comedy?
No, it's a dramatic movie.
Yeah, dramatically bad, but
I loved Birdman. I thought Birdman was great.
I could not get into Birdman. I respect its creativity.
Yeah,
but I think that of Michael Keaton's comedic early work, Mr. Mom
takes it.
It takes it for me.
It's so good.
Beetlejuice is great.
Beetlejuice is a more kind of offbeat comedy. Mr. Mom is, he's very dry. He's very sarcastic, but his delivery, he's just got one of the greatest kind of comedic deliveries I've ever seen. And he's playing a guy in his probably mid-30s, has 3 kids. I think his oldest son's like 8, maybe 7 or 8. His middle child is about 4 or 5, and they have a young daughter who's not even 2 years old. And he's married to Terry Garr, and he's just been laid off. He
or as they say,
furloughed. Yeah, he's been furloughed, and he works in the car industry. I believe this is set in Detroit, and his boss is played by Jeffrey Tambor, and his coworker is Christopher Lloyd. And
some other guy I don't know.
And some other random guy. And, it's so funny watching this because, they get so dressed up to go to work. They're wearing like fancy suits. They're doing the carpool. They talk about splitting gas money and stuff on the way to work. And within the first 10 minutes, he gets laid off. And it's very obvious that Terry Garr is at home. Her name is Caroline, running the show. She takes care of the family. She's been at home raising the kids for 8 years. She had a career before they had kids, but she gave it up to be a stay-at-home mom. When he loses his job, they make a bet who can get a job first. And she did. She was able to get back into an advertising position working for a very evil, lecherous Martin Mull as Mr. Ron Richardson.
Around here, he's Mr. Richardson. Ugh. Well, he told me I could call him Ron.
At lunch. Yeah. He's so gross. But a lot of the movie is really kind of focuses on Jack and him trying to figure out how to be a stay-at-home dad and really embrace this role. And I feel like John Hughes was writing this movie with the idea that these characters were actually still kind of stuck in the 50s, because Jack Butler had no domestic skills whatsoever. In fact, I remember as a kid, our dad hated this movie because he thought it made men look so stupid, made men seem so inept and unable to take care of very basic chores. But I feel like John Hughes was kind of pulling from the idea that maybe men in the 50s that were husbands and running off to work would never have to be bothered doing these kind of domestic chores and whatnot, so they wouldn't have a clue on how to navigate a grocery store or use a vacuum cleaner or a washing machine.
John Hughes actually wrote it loosely based on his own experience, taking care of his 2 kids.
Oh wow. Okay, so he had no domestic experience.
I have a feeling like these are exaggerated kind of circumstances.
Clearly.
Oh, come on, the vacuum cleaner that they call Jaws. Like just roaming around the house, attacking them and
yanking the curtains off the curtain rod and scaring the children. But I mean, Michael Keaton just delivers this so well. He's so dedicated to just being this very, very funny guy. Go ahead.
Well, I think also he understands, like, the kids need to be taken care of. He kind of sees it as a challenge to, take care of the family. I mean, he genuinely, like, wants to take care of them, and he's totally fine with being at home with them. It's just he doesn't know the routine that Caroline has set. Just kind of knowing the kids the way she does.
Sure.
It's more of a challenge to him, and by the end of the movie, he gets it.
Well, yeah, and I think this movie does a really interesting job of not just showing kind of the funny things that can happen when you're thrust into a role that doesn't feel comfortable and kind of being kind of shoved into the deep end and having to learn how to do all these things kind of on your own. Because the job she has, she's got a very demanding job. She's actually gone a lot more than I think anyone really expected when she took that job. She's working late hours, and of course, Ron Richardson has no problem with her being there late with him. I think
he sets it up that way.
Yeah, but I think what's so interesting is the movie plays out. Jack Butler starts to really deal with all of the issues I think a lot of stay-at-home parents deal with, just kind of the repetition, some depression, just kind of. She even says maybe there's boredom because he at one point, when the two of them have like a big fight, because he's at one point he kind of lets himself go. He wears the same flannel shirt for like a month. He grows out a really goofy beard, gains a little weight, but he's in a funk, and he's just kind of gotten lost in this mode of being unemployed. And I've been unemployed before.
And I've been there.
There's definitely times where you're feeling really challenged because you're looking for work, you're not coming up with anything, and I wasn't raising kids when that happened. I don't think you were either.
No.
But when you're also trying to deal with, well, these little humans are relying on me, I need to get it together. But what does he do? Like he falls into watching a lot of Young and the Restless and becoming chummy with the other stay-at-home moms at the elementary school and getting poker games together and going out to strip clubs. And
no, that's a funny scene. All the moms decide to take him out and not tell him where he's going.
Oh my God! And can we talk about how hairy that stripper was? I mean, we've been like watching a lot of '80s movies, and these men are so freaking hairy.
That's not your cup of tea.
No, or it's just kind of shocking.
I think it's a generational thing. Or
yeah, thanks, Burt Reynolds.
Yeah.
But this this movie,
sorry.
In addition to just all of the great comic beats that Jack Butler has, he has a lot of competition with Ron Richardson, because Ron Richardson comes to their house a few different times to pick up Carolyn on these overnights that they have for her work. And, he ends up with one of the greatest entrance scenes of all time, where he sees Ron Richardson coming up the walkway. So he realizes quickly, I got to throw some overalls on and turn my hat backwards and go grab my chainsaw and pretend that I'm like doing all this super manly work out there. And offers him a beer at 7 a.m. and gets turned down. So he's like, how about scotch? But Ron Richardson is an entirely separate problem in this movie. He is so gross. I thought last week when we were talking about The Legend of Billie Jean, we were going to get all the sexual harassment stuff out of the way. But no, Mr. Mom and Clue later both deal with just this gross stuff. And here I thought, okay, I watched Mad Men. You know, Don Draper and Roger Sterling, they're gross advertising guys that treat women not great in the office. But, you know, this movie takes place 20 years later, but they were still doing it in the 80s. And
Jack even refers to him as Madison Avenue
I know,
at one
it's
point.
So great. But I mean, they're on a plane. They're on a private jet going somewhere, and you know, Ron is trying to tell Caroline how great she is because of 2 reasons. She's smart, but she's also really, really attractive. And it's just, you can't say stuff like that. What are you talking about? It's just so gross.
It's definitely kind of a time capsule of sorts to like see stuff like that and then think about watching it now.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, none of what is going on here would fly in the work environment.
No.
I'm not saying it doesn't go on.
Sure.
Because I'm sure it still does, and there's a lot of women and probably some men that all have to deal with some sort of harassment at work.
Yeah.
But it's a theme that's very that stands out quite a lot in this movie. But I think one thing that's really impressive, Caroline doesn't buy into any of it. She calls him out on it. She doesn't want to hear it. She's just like, I don't want to deal with it. And I think that is one of the true like strengths that about her and her relationship with Jack is she really wants to just do her job, and she misses her kids, and you know, Jack, you know, as jealous as he might feel or insecure he might feel within the situation, you know, he knows that his job right now is to make sure that the household stays together. And her job right now is to go home and go out to work and make some money. And I think that's one of the great things I like about Jack Butler in this is he immediately, like, it's besides the fact that they have the bet, he has no problem being at home. He doesn't resent her being at home or anything like that. Yes, he goes through some comedic challenges. I found that the movie, I'm kind of really glad that we watched it as kids. Yeah. Because it was really kind of, you know, it left an impression on, I think, me. I mean, our dad worked a lot, but he also did stuff around the house. I mean, and he would he did things to take care of us. He helped us with our homework and took us to school and then later he did, you know, he found so much joy in cooking, so he always cooked us dinner and all these kinds of things. So we were lucky to have a dad who had no problem doing domesticated things. Oh yeah, I never once thought that Jack Butler's inability to feel comfortable doing a lot of the domestic chores was any reflection on like all dads in general, because clearly our dad did all sorts of stuff. No, but I think that, and still does. I think that one of the things though that's kind of interesting about watching this movie now is they could never you can't modernize this movie. I mean, because where we live, I mean, in other parts of the world and other parts of the United States, I'm sure that, you know, there is still this socialized kind of 1950s mentality of how a household should be. That's there's no doubt that still is going on. Where we live in California, having a stay-at-home dad, totally normal. I mean, we're in a time and in a location where, you know, it's impossible almost to have a single income household. Yeah, it's really difficult. You cannot like take this situation and just be like, hey, let's update it for now and we'll put it in San Francisco. That would not that would be so hard. Yeah, I mean, for all the movies from the 80s that are being remade, I don't think this one will be, for sure. I would be really, really shocked if there's any kind of attempt to remake this movie. Yeah, because I mean, I just think that also there's kind of a different style within parenting now where no one really has a problem with the dad doing things around the house or,
Yeah.
Taking care of the kids or anything like that. It's much more acceptable, from a social standpoint. Sherry and I were just watching another movie that kind of deals with similar kind of gender roles. Just to think from the 50s and 60s up into the 80s and then into now, watching how things have changed. This movie is kind of in the middle there where it's the turning point.
Yeah.
So it's really kind of poignant that this movie comes out when it does.
Yeah.
Because you have this kind of changing of
the social norms.
The social norms.
What other movie were you watching?
We were watching On the Basis of Sex about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I gotta watch that too.
I missed probably the first 15 or so minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it.
On my list.
Great.
Some other characters I want to talk about. Their neighbor Joan. Joan is played by Anne Gillian. She has kind of short brown hair, very sexy. She was also in a TV show that we were talking about earlier called It's a Living. She had like a kind of platinum blonde hair back in that, but she is this femme fatale, almost like character that Jack feels as a little threatening to his marriage, maybe. I mean, not that Joan ever overtly pursues him, but
no, she clearly pursues him.
You think so?
The moment that he meets Joan in the supermarket,
yeah,
they're in the parking lot, and then another one of the neighborhood goes up. Women go up to him or goes up to her, and she's like, "He's married," and she's like, "So were we once," and she's got this. From the very beginning, she has this. She has this how do I get close to Jack?
Do you think she was really going to try and break up their home though?
I think that she probably was not going to try and steal him and the kids away from her, but I think that she might have tried to take advantage of the times when Caroline wasn't around.
Maybe. I mean, she certainly was wearing low-cut shirts while they were playing poker and leaning over and asking him, "Are these any good?" But this character, she is so funny. I love her. She was really funny.
Is she your favorite character in this movie?
Oh no, Jack Butler is my favorite character by far. Jack Butler is just the best. I mean, him in the entire Chariots of Fire Olympics that's set up at Ron Richardson's annual barbecue.
It's at the company party.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself. I mean, I was trying to figure out what my favorite scene was, and it was okay, is it the grocery store? Is it this Ron Richardson Olympics? Is it when he has the Young and the Restless dream sequence when Joan shows up? And I can't decide. There's so many great scenes in this whole movie, but Joan definitely is in at least one of my favorite scenes. Who's your favorite character?
It's kind of tough. I really like the kids are great.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the 3 kids, and Alex is the oldest. And he's got all these very kind of all these one-liners that are what's the term?
He's precocious.
He's precocious. Thank you. He's got all these very precocious one-liners, and then you have Kenny, who is just so innocent, and he carries around his little woolly blanket, and you had a blanket, right? That you carried around. Do you still have it?
I don't think I carried it around, but yeah.
You always made sure you had it in at
my
bed.
Bluey.
Do you still have it?
Yeah.
Is it intact?
Yes. It's nicely stored. It's taken care of.
And I think so. You
guys are learning way too much about me.
That's the whole point.
Exactly.
But
and then there's a little baby named Megan who's 18 months.
Yeah, and she's kind of wandering around in her little walker, and the kids there's a scene where they're painting the house, the interior of the house, and Kenny's painting her while she's just sitting there, and he's like, "Kenny, don't beat your sister." This is kind of funny. But back to my favorite character. Jack is clearly, probably one of the best characters because he's so fun to I mean, we really just follow him throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
He's in 90 to 95% of this movie.
He's in almost every single scene.
But if I was
Ron Richardson.
No, I think it's Martin Mull does such a great job playing that kind of character.
Oh yeah,
and,
he plays Slimeball really well.
And I'm not going to say Jeffrey Tambor because he's kind of goofy in it, and he ends up kind of the whole thing with how Jack loses his job is shady, and which you find out near the end of the movie. And Jack and Caroline are really, in the most part, confident people.
Yes.
And they're really good kind of role models. Mm-hmm. So I would say if it's not Jack, it's Caroline.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great choice. And I mean, the fact that she is able to, punch her boss in the face for sneaking into her hotel room.
And she just quits. And it's just like, I don't have to deal with this shit. And that's great. We need to see, that's the kind of stuff you need to see in movies. You need to have good, strong characters in general who people can look up to. Yeah. But yeah, I thought she was really good in it. I think she's also, there's something about her presence on screen. Mm-hmm. She's got kind of like this very kind of plain but cutesy kind of look to her.
Oh yeah,
so it's fun to kind of watch her and her mannerisms and stuff. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, Terry Garr and Michael Keaton have really great chemistry. I mean, they are very believable as a couple.
Yeah, and then my favorite scene in the movie is it's the Chariots of Fire kind of like Olympic scene is great, and it's so like there's something that I didn't catch on to until I watched the movie like maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
The tricycles?
No, about how like they everyone who races in the race against Ron throws it.
Yeah.
Because the boss has to win. Yeah. Like that whole aspect of it. I didn't catch on to that until I watched it, at a much older age. Sure. But
well, it wouldn't have made sense to us as kids.
No.
Why wouldn't you want to win a race?
And why would Jack lose? And why is he falling? Did he trip over something? Yeah. That's stupid. But the whole scene, there's like this whole kind of scenario where there's the TV repair person, the exterminator, and a guy to check the pilot light all show up at the house.
Oh yeah, it's like the apocalypse is coming down.
And then Jack is cooking food, or he's trying to cook food for the kids, and he's trying to vacuum. He has just started laundry, which at this point I can see where Dad's kind of like
why are you such an idiot?
Why are you such an idiot? Kind of feelings kind of happen where he says, "Hey kids, let's clean all the bedding," and he doesn't just do like one bed at a time. It's like, let's just throw everyone's stuff in there, and he doesn't know how to like mix the detergent. He's like, it's hilarious.
It's like a horror movie scene, like the suspense in that scene.
Oh yeah,
like that whole 6-7 minute sequence of everything just
that's
falling apart.
Just from like a filmmaking standpoint, just think of the choreography that was involved to put that scene together, and just the writing it to make sure all the chain of events happen, and then how it ends with, they finally all the chaos stops, and the baby has eaten a can of chili, and it turns into this what's going to happen to this girl, this baby's diaper kind of thing. Yeah, and it's funny. I mean, I think that there's a number of scenes here that you could loosely say, not my parenting skills, but maybe some of them kind of take on. That scene is great, and then there's a really good scene where after Jack has kind of gone through his low and he's coming back to he's cleaning himself up. He shaves the beard. Yeah. He starts getting in shape and feeling better about himself and getting comfortable with his situation. Because I think that's one of the things that doesn't happen in this movie that is kind of underlined with, it looks like he's just adapting to this homemaker lifestyle, but I think in a lot of ways he never grieved the loss of his job.
Correct. Because he was thrown into, you've got to be Mr. Super stay-at-home dad.
Exactly. This is what you have to do. And then as he kind of hit his low and he's coming out of it, he he decides like he's going to take the shirt that he was wearing and throw it, and it's a symbolic thing where he throws it into a fire.
Yeah.
And then he looks down at his little son about taking care of his woobie. He goes into his son Kenny's room, and they are having kind of a heart-to-heart, and he talks to him about his blanket, and that whole scene is like goes to show not just like, oh, he's like this goofy parent who comes up with like zany ways of raising the kids or anything like that. This is like one of the key scenes where you actually show him like being a real kind of parent.
Yeah.
That's a very kind of a realistic kind of thing, and I really like that scene.
Yeah. And then Kenny's like, can I have a moment to myself?
He's like, absolutely.
Yeah. The kids are so cute.
Yeah.
Especially early on when Jack has to take him to school the first time. He's like, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, dropping him off. This special kind of...
It's like, well, duh, of course there's a special way to do it. Don't you know, Dad? Come on. Duh.
South to drop off, north to pick up.
Move it. Yeah. But anyways, well, like I said, this is a movie that I can put on anytime. It makes me feel good every time I watch it. It goes at a good pace. It never feels like long and slow in any parts. It makes me laugh so much.
There's one thing that at the end of the movie is not really resolved, how they're going to change their family situation, because Jack gets his job offered back to him, and she's quit her job. So I'm assuming that it's just going to go back to the way it was.
Maybe, but I mean, I think the scene when she has to leave for California on Halloween, and he kind of has this heart-to-heart with her about all these things that she's missed, and how he says, if you were even here, you may as well just go as a ghost because you've missed so much. I think that it's very possible that there were things that he wasn't noticing when he was so wrapped up in his job.
That's true.
So now, as with him going back to work, he's going to have a different appreciation for wanting to pay attention to the little details that he knows he's not going to get to see every day because he's not with the kids every day. But yeah, they really did kind of leave it up in the air with exactly how the work situation was going to be, because Ron Richardson comes back and begs Caroline to come back, but then Jinx comes back and offers the job back to Jack. So who knows? But I feel like the experience of her being able to go back to work and prove that she can take care of her family in a financial way, but also really valuing, I really miss seeing my kids and I really miss being with my husband, while Jack also gets to really value, oh my gosh, there's so much that I would be missing if I wasn't with them all the time, but now I get the opportunity to go back in the workforce. I think it's just a good thing for all of them together. I mean,
maybe Jack will do the south to drop off, and Caroline can do the north to pick up.
Maybe they'll split their days that way. Who knows?
I don't know. I think, again, it's a heartwarming kind of movie.
Yeah, it's so good. A movie that's maybe not heartwarming and maybe more just silly is Matt's movie. We're going to talk about Clue.
Okay, so Nancy and I grew up playing the board game Clue. Mm-hmm. It's a very kind of basic game. You are given cards, and you have a character that is a little wooden. It's probably now plastic, and it probably looks like the character or something. But ours, it was so old. It was like a little wooden, like cone-shaped piece, and you had a dice or a die, and basically the idea of the game was there's a murder, and you have to figure out who the murderer is, what weapon they used, and in what room it took place. And you were given these cards, and at the beginning of the game, someone would draw a card from each category, and it would get placed in this envelope. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then you would get dealt cards, and then someone else, and everyone would get dealt cards, and you had like a sheet where you could like write down like, oh, I've got these cards, so I know these aren't the murderer.
Sure.
And then you would roll dice to move your piece, and once you got, the goal was you tried to get your piece into the room where you thought the murder happened, and then try and explain the murder. Now,
Matt remembers a lot more about how to play this game than I do. All I can remember is the 3 cards getting put in an envelope. And the board game, like what the board looks like with all the rooms kind of laid out like the house.
I'm going to be honest here.
You looked it up on YouTube.
I didn't look it up, but that's how I remember us playing it.
Oh,
it might not have been the official rules, but that's how we played it. Anyway, kind of like how every time on Monopoly, we passed go, we just gave each other $1,000. You remember that?
I don't remember $1,000. Wow.
It's supposed to be 200, but we played by our own rules. Anyway, so the characters were Professor Plum, Colonel Mustard, Mr. Green, Miss Peacock, Miss White, and Miss Scarlet. And the weapons were a rope, a lead pipe, a wrench, a revolver, a knife, and a candlestick. And then there was these rooms in this mansion that's on this maze of a board. And there's like secret passages and all that. So why am I telling you about this board game? Because someone had the genius idea to turn this game into a comedic movie.
Yeah.
And starring Tim Curry as the butler, and there is no butler in the game. Yeah. So, I mean, they had some creative license with this. And you have Tim Curry playing the butler. You have Martin Mull, once again, as Colonel Mustard, and Christopher Lloyd, once again, because he did have a small part in Mr. Mom, as Professor Plum. You had Michael McKean, who is very well known at for Spinal Tap. And a brief stint on Saturday Night Live.
And Laverne and Shirley.
Oh, Laverne and Shirley. There you go.
And more currently, he's been on Better Call Saul as Chuck McGill.
I don't watch that. But.
So good.
And then for the women in the movie, you have Eileen Brennan as Mrs. Peacock, Madeline Kahn as Mrs. White, and Leslie Ann Warren as Miss Scarlet. Now, I don't know where I would see Eileen Brennan or, what she would be in. But I just remember us getting really excited because in the late 80s, Aerosmith put out the album Pump. And on that album was the song Janie's Got a Gun. And in the video, we were watching the video, and one of the women in the video is Leslie Ann Warren, as we're like, hey, Miss Scarlet's in this video. So, long story short, too late.
Too late.
Which is a line in the movie.
Yeah, multiple times.
The way that they kind of turn this board game into this movie is all of them are brought together for a dinner party. And some of them recognize each other, but they don't really know who they are. And the names of the characters are actually aliases that they were given when they come to the party. They discover that one thing that they all have in common is they're being blackmailed by this guy named Mr. Body, who is played by lead singer of Fear, Lee Ving. They get into this house, and then all of a sudden, people start dying.
It takes a while for people to start dying.
Except for the 6 main characters and Tim Curry's Wadsworth.
Yeah.
Wadsworth. So the whole movie is basically about them trying to figure out who is the murderer.
Well, I mean,
just like the game.
Yeah. I mean, a murder wouldn't have necessarily happened. So this movie is a lot sillier to me now as an adult than it was when we were kids.
Oh, really? I thought it was really silly.
I mean, I thought it was pretty silly as a kid, but I mean, there's suspense, and I enjoyed the music as a kid. I thought the kind of silly music was fun to follow.
It was kind of like watching like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yes.
With there's a lot of physical comedy in it,
yeah,
and like pratfall kind of comedy and everything, and yelling when it's not necessary, and it's like watching like a live action Looney Tunes, in some ways.
That's a really great way to describe it.
So it's just a lot of fun. I mean, watching it, I think I distinctly remember renting this and then making a copy of it for us to rewatch over and over. We watched it over and over again. I don't know. Growing up watching it, there's some themes in it that are a little more mature than probably we should have been watching at the time.
Like the whole idea of communism is a red herring.
Yeah, or the fact that the maid in the house is wearing next to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, she's like literally in a French maid's outfit, and God, her accent is just atrocious. Things about rewatching this movie 25, 30 years later that I don't think I paid attention to or just didn't bug me when I was 8 or 9 watching this the first time. Like, Leslie Ann Warren is a horrible actress. Like, she acts like she's stuck in a weird 40s movie. Like, just everything about her performance. And I loved her when we were kids. I don't know if it was because she had this beautiful blue dress or because she was really sassy, or there were things about maybe just her boldness that made sense when I was a kid, because, you know, again, I was a fan of Grease 2 and other strong kind of sassy ladies back then. But watching it now, it's like, ugh, because now Mrs. Peacock is my favorite character. She is so great. She's got great scenes where she screams, and, you know, she everything about her performance is so fun for me.
Did you know Leslie Ann Warren wasn't even supposed to be in this movie?
Really? Who was supposed to be in the movie?
Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher was going to play Mrs. Scarlet, and then right before filming started, she went into rehab.
Oh.
And
she may have downplayed it too much. I actually just heard yesterday that Leslie Ann Warren was also up for Lois Lane. She was up for being Margot Kidder's role in the Superman movies.
Oh man, that would have been.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would have. I mean, I only really know her from.
I only know her from this movie, really,
and being in the background in the Janie's Got a Gun video. That's
I mean, and I don't want I don't want to be like some Leslie Ann Warren hater or anything, but I think because I really liked her as a kid, watching it now and seeing that she's kind of giving this almost like stage play performance when everyone else, of course, is very silly in this movie too, but it's in a different way. And she bugged me a lot. And I don't think I anticipated being so annoyed by her on this rewatch.
Well, there's a couple things, like if you look up her history, like that she's done recently, that I don't remember her being in, but there's shows and stuff that I like her. I like those shows, like she was on Community and probably the bit part, and she was in Daredevil, the Netflix series.
I haven't
Daredevil.
seen that season yet.
Ooh, so anyway,
but yeah, so that was really kind of like my. Yvette's accent being horrible, Leslie Ann Warren being a little more annoying, and also, again, this theme, all the, like, inappropriate sexual harassment stuff. I mean, like, Christopher Lloyd grabbing her ass when they're standing at the door, and just stuff like that. It was like, I don't know. And again, this is a comedy.
It's part of the comedy, though. Like, there's a scene where, again, they're all being blackmailed.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Wadsworth has is an envelope full of evidence of of things that they're being blackmailed for, and there's a scene where and it's implied that there's these photos of Colonel Mustard with Yvette, like in real life.
Yeah.
And Mrs. White takes them and is like, no one could ever get in that get in that position. And Professor Plum looks at it and he's like, sure they can. Let me show you. He picks her up and she's like,
get off me.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think actually of the female of the actresses in the movie, I really like Madeline Kahn as Mrs. White, because she has
her too.
Her kind of very kind of monotone, deadpan voice that she has throughout the movie. It plays well, but
she's got so much rage just under the surface,
right? And
it's great.
This is a fun kind of movie, and like I said, it's like watching a live action Looney Tunes. It's got that kind of, like, you turn it on and you kind of just laugh at it, and it's not like necessarily, it doesn't have kind of a lowbrow humor, which some people really appreciate, like a Dumb and Dumber kind of level humor, but it has a wit to it. that I appreciate.
So how would you categorize spending 15 minutes at the beginning of the movie of everyone smelling dog shit on their shoe? Is that lowbrow, highbrow? Like, where do you categorize that? Because that definitely feels like Looney Tunes or Dumb and Dumber.
I think that, clearly what happens is Wadsworth steps in it.
Yeah, we know.
And then he cleans it. Then every time someone meets Wadsworth, it's like they question whether they have it on their shoe because...
I know, but I mean, it goes on for like 10 minutes.
So? It's...
Yeah.
That's as lowbrow as it really gets.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but there's definitely a lot of physical humor. Mr. Green being a very anxious person and being very accident prone. That happens a lot. And then, of course, chandeliers crashing and almost crushing Martin Mull. And, But Christopher Lloyd is so pervy. He is such a perv in this movie.
Well, and, it kind of goes with his backstory.
Well, yeah, he was banging his patients. Played by Jane Whelan of
the Go-Go's.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just remember like always being able to put this movie on and being entertained by it. Now, there's something that we didn't get to witness this because we never saw this movie in the theater. And this goes again to the creativity of the making of this movie. Is when we watched this movie, it had this thing where the movie played out and then there was a conclusion and then it would go, but wait, it could have happened like this. Yeah. And then it showed you like an alternate ending and then it was, oh wait, but this is how it actually happened. And then you had like a third alternate ending. And that's how we always grew up knowing the movie. And doing my research, I found out that when they released the movie in theaters, you got a different ending depending on what theater you went to. So they would say like in the ads where it would like list the times for the movies, it would say like ending A, ending B, or ending C. So you would get a different ending depending on which theater you went to.
What a ploy just to make people go watch it 3 different times.
But that's so creative because it plays into the game. Like the whole idea of the game being different.
Yeah. Depending on how the cards are drawn, you wouldn't know.
So, I mean, I think that, like, watching the movie when we were kids, it's like, hey, this is a funny haha kind of movie, and it's got some adult themes, and there's, pratfalls and all this kind of stuff. Watching it now and knowing some of that history and, like, seeing knowing how movies are made and all that kind of stuff, I thought that this movie, in general, is really creative.
No, it really is. I mean, I don't know of any other movie that offers, in the last 15 minutes, 3 alternate endings.
Wayne's World.
Okay.
But yeah, it was. I really kind of admire that nowadays.
Yeah,
and I think
it is creative.
And I think probably Tim Curry is definitely he's leading the way in this whole movie.
Yeah.
I mean, he is in 75% of this movie.
Oh yeah.
What's
his job, Matt?
He's a butler.
What does a butler do?
He buttles. And what does that mean? He's in charge of the kitchen and dining room.
Sorry.
1 + 2 + 2 + 1.
Oh my god.
But he's definitely the standout character in this movie.
Yeah.
And I think because I always default to there's the standout character who's easy to like, but who's my other character that I like?
The cook.
No, I think I just really like Professor Plum.
Mm-hmm.
He's just
because he's so pervy.
Not because he's pervy. I think he's just kind of funny. And
he is funny.
And
maybe he was poisoned. That may be my favorite scene.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. That whole scenario at the beginning. God. I mean. And probably a good, I think it's probably the last 45 minutes to an hour of the movie is them just trying to figure out, recapping the entire, the whole evening to figure out who possibly could have done it. Again, kind of playing into the idea of the board game, how you have to explain what happened. I just found that I just really enjoy this.
Well, we didn't see Rocky Horror as kids. So this was maybe our first real experience with Tim Curry until we saw Legend later, but he was fairly normal in this movie.
Fairly normal. It was Legend. There's another movie that we saw as kids that he was in, Annie.
Oh, that's
he
right.
He plays Rooster in Annie.
Yeah.
And
kind of a small role, though.
But I mean, his range.
Oh,
I mean, from Rocky Horror to this to It to all the other things that he's done.
Yeah.
He's definitely. You can really see his talent.
Yeah.
In how he can stretch it in all different kinds of ways. And again, a lot of the, Madeline Kahn has probably this great scene where she's describing how much she hates Yvette. And when I see her, flames on the side of my face, that was all improvised.
Was it really?
Yeah, she improvised that
Awesome.
whole scene. And just to show the talent that was kind of
amazing.
In the room, throughout the entire movie, just like thinking of all the different people that are working together. I can only imagine the challenge of having to like have this whole ensemble together.
Oh yeah, I mean, how do they not just crack each other up through every single take?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be hard.
I mean, and Michael McKean, he's very funny in this movie.
Great actor.
Yeah, everyone is really good, with the exception of Miss Scarlett.
I give her a pass for being a last minute add-in to fill in to help out.
That makes a lot of. Actually, I appreciate that you had that information because I never would have guessed that she wasn't the first choice. It just never occurred to me that she wasn't the first choice. But I'm curious how different Carrie Fisher would have played it.
It probably
more subdued.
Yeah. It's hard to tell. I mean, I know you hate it when I surprise you with things.
It's okay.
But we're gonna play a little game, and because this is a movie about a game.
The rope.
No.
In the hallway.
No. So it's the news now is that Ryan Reynolds is connected somehow to making a remake of this movie, which they could totally do, because I mean, I would definitely do they'd have to update it. I mean, they could still have it take place the movie takes place in like 1954.
Yeah.
I mean, they could still do that. So assuming Ryan Reynolds, if anyone who doesn't know who he is, he plays Deadpool and has been in a lot of different movies where he's been a comedic kind of lead, and he's actually in the remake of Amityville Horror, which I thought was pretty good.
Is he going to be the butler?
I'm assuming he would be Wadsworth. Let's just assume that, because he's got to have this driving force, and that's kind of her personality. How would you... you and I together. Let's do this together. Let's dream cast the remake of this movie.
Okay, well, I want John Hamm in it.
Who would John Hamm... he's got to be Colonel Mustard.
Okay, he can be Colonel Mustard.
I was thinking...
I want Amy Poehler to be Mrs. Peacock.
Oh, wow, that'd be great. Yeah, John...
Okay, let me just think of the whole cast of Parks and Recreation, and let's see who we can put in.
Yeah, let's... Yeah, can Nick... Who would
Ron Swanson.
Nick Offerman would have to be...
Colonel Mustard.
Colonel Mustard at that point.
Well, okay, so John Hamm... Let's have John Hamm in here as
Colonel Mustard.
Colonel Mustard.
And then...
I want Amy Poehler as Mrs. Peacock.
I'm thinking... Let me see. Who would make a great Miss Scarlet? Let's think of a fun, great Miss... Oh! How about Anna Kendrick?
Maybe.
I mean, I think because it has to be kind of fun and quirky.
Maybe. We'll put a pin in that. Well, okay. Well, let's tease this out. So
Okay.
Anna Kendrick could be Miss Scarlet, or maybe someone else could play Miss Scarlet.
Can I just throw?
Yeah, please. Just
let's throw Gillian Anderson as Miss White.
Okay,
I think that'd be fun.
She could be Miss White.
Let's see. We need a Professor Plum and a Mr. Green.
Yeah, Mr. Green and Professor Plum. Well, do we want Robert Downey Jr. in this movie? Or is he?
Wow, that's a really you're throwing out some like big names for this.
Well, yeah. Why not? Go big or go home. Maybe not. Okay, maybe not Robert Downey Jr. But he's so funny. I'm trying. Okay, if I can't use any Marvel characters, then let's think about this. This is fun.
I've got a Mr. Green, but let me do that last.
Okay.
So let's think of Professor Plum.
Okay, Professor Plum's got to be someone who's kind of nerdy. See, I would want like Adam Scott or someone like that.
Oh, that'd be good.
Which I know again. So maybe not Leslie Knope as Mrs. Peacock if we're gonna have Adam Scott.
Then maybe Tina Fey.
Okay, Tina Fey can be Mrs. Peacock. Adam Scott can be Professor Plum.
I'm thinking actually. I'll go back. How about I'm thinking Mrs. Peacock can be either Tina Fey or Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah, either of those. I would say either of those would be good. I'm not liking Anna Kendrick as Miss Scott. She's too young.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's think at least mid to late 40s for most of these actresses.
Okay.
Can we get Christina Hendricks in here somehow?
Well, she would
be Miss Scarlet.
She would be Miss Scarlet.
Yeah. Christina Hendricks is going to be Miss Scarlet.
But then you're going to have Christina Hendricks and John Hamm?
Well, John Hamm doesn't have to be in it then. Well, I don't know.
Well, if you've already done Amy Poehler, then are you still going with Adam Scott?
Well, Adam Scott is Professor Plum. I like that.
Okay.
Because he's so nerdy and he's so great.
Okay. Well, then now we need a Colonel Mustard and a Mr. Green. Colonel Mustard can be, let's think of, a funny yet kind of older actor who might be popular these days, that would that would work with Ryan Reynolds. Oh, maybe that's how we get Hugh Jackman to work with him. They're friends.
Wait, is that really true though? Are they friends or not friends?
Oh, they're friends.
Okay.
I mean, this whole Twitter war.
I like Hugh Jackman as Colonel Mustard.
Hugh Jackman as Colonel Mustard.
Yes, okay. So we got Hugh Jackman as Colonel Mustard, Christina Hendricks as Miss Scarlet, Tina Fey as Miss Peacock. Mm-hmm. No, as Mrs. White. No, Gillian Anderson as Mrs. White.
Who? What? Oh,
Adam Scott as Professor Plum, and who do you want as your Mr. Green?
John Cusack.
Oh my god. Perfect.
I had to stop her from screaming. And then we could get Joan in there as the cook.
Oh my god. She wouldn't be a vet?
She could be a vet. I don't care.
Yeah, let her be.
Maybe there's not an Yvette though, because we know we have to have the butler. I mean, you got to change this up somewhat. You can't just make the same exact movie.
Yeah, we could.
You do have to have those 6.
You know what? You know what they'd have? They'd have like an Uber Eats driver show up, and then the Uber Eats driver would need to hang out for a while or something.
Something like that.
That would be the informant.
Yeah.
Or someone's administrative, like your personal assistant or something. It doesn't need to be a French maid. It could be like some other kind of person.
All right.
But,
anyway, so that was fun. You like playing that game?
Thank
you.
Okay, that was good.
Okay, so anyway, so that's how we're gonna. Ryan Reynolds, get on it. That's how we're gonna. That's how we think you should cast this. I don't know what schedules are like. We don't work in Hollywood, but. We'll watch that. That'd be fun.
That is really funny.
Anyway, so
that's a curveball I didn't mind whatsoever.
Okay,
it was great.
All right. So anyway, that's it for Clue. I would definitely go check it out. You can watch it on a bunch of different streaming services, or you can rent it somewhere. It's a fun movie. I know it's on Amazon Prime, or you can get it on Vudu or something like that. Again, I'm glad that we got to rewatch that movie. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's it. I want to thank everybody for listening. Go check out 2 fun movies. One that's going to 2 movies that'll make you feel good.
Yeah,
they're fun.
A little bit of 80s nostalgia.
Yeah. So, again, thank you for listening. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, blah, 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 blah. Mulder over here. Yeah. He's totally into this episode. So, thank you again. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Nancy.
This is Fighting Over the VCR.
Thanks,
Take care.
guys.